Lieutenant Sarah Miller vanished without a trace after a routine shift at Fort Bragg, and now investigators fear she may have fallen prey to a calculated serial killer targeting military women. Lieutenant Sarah Miller had always been known for her discipline and dedication. At 28, she had already earned the respect of her peers at Fort Bragg, where she worked tirelessly as an Army nurse. Her days were long and demanding, often stretching late into the night, but she embraced the routine with quiet determination. On a cold November evening, after finishing her shift, she left the hospital as usual, planning a brief visit to her sister's apartment nearby. She had called home that morning to check in with her parents, and everything seemed normal. No one could have predicted that this would be the last time anyone would see her. Sarah's car was later discovered abandoned in a poorly lit parking lot, just a few blocks from the hospital. The doors were unlocked, her purse and phone were still inside, and there were no signs of a struggle. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. The eerie quiet of the scene sent a chill through investigators. They scoured the area for any clues, examining tire marks, footprints, and surveillance cameras. But every lead seemed to dissolve into nothing. The footage captured only a fleeting glimpse of Sarah walking toward the lot alone, with nothing to suggest danger. Beyond that, the cameras showed nothing: no shadows lurking, no strange vehicles, no unusual movements. It was as though someone had planned her disappearance with precision. Her family reported her missing immediately, and the military launched a coordinated search. Days passed with no word of her whereabouts. Colleagues and friends combed the base, retracing her steps, but every conversation and every visit revealed only ordinary, unremarkable routines. There were no enemies, no recent arguments, and no personal struggles to explain a sudden disappearance. The notion that she might have left voluntarily seemed implausible to those who knew her. As the investigation unfolded, a sense of unease settled over the base. The absence of physical evidence, combined with the mysterious nature of her disappearance, left everyone questioning what had really happened. Could someone have been watching her? Was this a random act, or something more calculated? The questions multiplied, and with every passing hour, the urgency to find her alive grew. Lieutenant Sarah Miller, once a figure of strength and care, had become the center of a chilling mystery that threatened to shake the military community to its core. As investigators continued their search for Sarah, unsettling patterns began to emerge that sent chills through the military community. When they reviewed old missing person reports, they noticed striking similarities between Sarah's disappearance and several cases involving women in uniform over the past 3 years. In each instance, the women had vanished during or shortly after work, often at night, with no signs of struggle and no apparent reason for leaving. Personal belongings remained undisturbed, and surveillance footage revealed nothing more than fleeting glimpses of the victims in their final moments. The eerie parallels suggested that Sarah's disappearance was not an isolated incident, but part of something far more sinister. Detectives began to suspect the presence of a predator who knew the routines of military life intimately, someone capable of blending into the environment without raising suspicion. This revelation sent waves of fear across the bases, where female soldiers suddenly became acutely aware of their vulnerability. Security measures were reviewed, patrols increased, and women were advised to travel in pairs when possible. Yet despite these precautions, the sense of unease persisted, because the perpetrator had shown the ability to operate undetected, targeting women who were trained to be cautious and vigilant. At the hospital, Sarah's colleagues noticed subtle anomalies in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. A misplaced folder here, an unfamiliar presence there. Brief moments that had seemed insignificant at the time now took on a more sinister weight. Some recalled seeing a stranger loitering near the parking lot, someone whose presence had felt off, though no one had questioned it then. Investigators pieced together these seemingly minor observations, realizing they might be crucial to understanding how the abductions had been orchestrated. The emergence of these patterns transformed the investigation from a missing person case into a hunt for a calculated serial predator. Authorities created profiles, analyzing the routines of potential suspects and narrowing their focus to individuals with access to military facilities and detailed knowledge of operations. The thought that someone within or connected to the military could exploit that trust to target women struck fear into the hearts of service members everywhere. Sarah's disappearance had become more than a mystery; it had become a warning. Whoever had taken her was deliberate, meticulous, and patient, and time was running out for her and potentially for others who could fall prey to the same unseen menace. 2 weeks into the investigation, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A hiker who often explored the dense forests on the outskirts of Fort Bragg discovered a discarded backpack tucked beneath a pile of fallen leaves. The bag was worn and dirty, as if it had been left there for months. Inside, authorities found military identification cards, a pair of gloves, and a small notebook that belonged to a woman who had vanished the previous year under eerily similar circumstances. The notebook contained cryptic entries that chronicled daily routines, observations, and notes about other women at the base. It was a chilling discovery, suggesting that someone had been meticulously tracking the lives of these women long before they disappeared. Forensic experts examined the items carefully. Traces of DNA indicated contact with multiple individuals, hinting at a disturbing level of involvement and premeditation. Investigators studied the notebook line by line, piecing together a timeline of behavior that was obsessive and methodical. The entries revealed detailed knowledge of the victim's schedules, habits, and even personal relationships. It became clear that whoever had taken Sarah and the other women was not acting on impulse. This was a carefully calculated series of crimes. As the investigation widened, detectives began to suspect that the perpetrator was someone who moved comfortably within the military community. They looked at contractors, civilian employees, and anyone with access to multiple bases. Surveillance footage was reviewed once again, this time for subtle details that had previously gone unnoticed: vehicles parked unusually, people appearing at odd hours, and faces that lingered too long near the victims' workplaces. The search for Sarah intensified as authorities feared she might already be in danger, hidden somewhere the public would never suspect. The discovery of the backpack and notebook sparked a mix of dread and determination. It proved that a serial predator was operating in plain sight, exploiting the very trust and security designed to protect service members. Every page of the notebook seemed to anticipate each move the authorities might make, revealing the chilling intelligence and patience behind these abductions. Sarah was no longer just a missing person. She had become part of a pattern that demanded urgent action. Investigators realized that uncovering the identity of this predator was not just about saving Sarah, it was about preventing more women from vanishing into the shadows, victims of someone who had turned surveillance and obsession into a deadly game. Months of painstaking investigation finally began to yield results, though the breakthrough was more chilling than comforting. A security camera from a nearby base, previously overlooked, captured a suspicious vehicle parked near the hospital during Sarah's final shift. The car remained for several hours, its presence unnoticed by most. Yet the angle of the footage revealed a fleeting figure moving near the vehicle, watching the entrances and exits of the hospital. Investigators traced the registration to a civilian contractor with a spotless record, a man who had cultivated a reputation for being helpful and reliable on the base. His clean background had allowed him to move freely, blending into the daily operations without raising suspicion. As authorities searched his property, they discovered a hidden room behind a false wall, meticulously organized and terrifyingly precise. Inside were journals, photographs, and personal belongings from several missing military women, each item cataloged and preserved as if the perpetrator were collecting trophies. Among these items, Sarah's badge and the small locket she always wore were found, confirming that she had fallen into the hands of a predator who had studied and stalked his victims with chilling patience. The journals revealed a calculated obsession. Detailed entries described the routines of each woman, including exact work schedules, driving routes, and even personal habits. Each disappearance had been planned meticulously, with escape routes and contingencies mapped out. The realization that the perpetrator had been living among those meant to protect military personnel sent shockwaves through the investigative team. This was not a random act of violence. It was the work of a methodical predator who had exploited trust, security, and routine to execute his crimes. Authorities now had both a suspect and the evidence to link him directly to multiple disappearances, including Sarah's. The investigation shifted from theory to certainty, each piece of evidence painting a darker, more detailed portrait of a man who had operated in plain sight. The military community grappled with the horrifying truth. One of their own contractors had been exploiting their systems, carefully targeting women in uniform. Sarah's disappearance, once a baffling mystery, now fit into a chilling pattern that exposed both vulnerability and betrayal. The hunt had led to a breakthrough, but it also underscored the terrifying intelligence and patience of a predator who had spent years perfecting his method, leaving a trail of victims in his wake. The arrest of the contractor sent shockwaves through the military community. Known for his calm and unassuming demeanor, he had hidden a dark obsession behind a mask of professionalism. When authorities moved in, they uncovered the depth of his crimes, an entire network of stolen identities, journals, and personal items meticulously collected over years. Each object told the story of a woman who had vanished under suspicious circumstances, her life reduced to a catalog of memories for a man who thrived on control. Among the items was Sarah's locket, a symbol of her life and the cruelty of the predator who had taken her. As the investigation progressed, authorities pieced together the sequence of events that led to Sarah's disappearance. The contractor had observed her for weeks, learning her schedule, noting the times she walked to her car, and memorizing the routines of those around her. He had calculated every risk, leaving almost no trace behind. Yet, in his arrogance, he had left enough evidence to reveal a chilling pattern of premeditation, allowing law enforcement to finally connect the dots that had eluded them for months. Sarah's remains were eventually recovered in a remote wooded area, miles from where she had been last seen. The discovery was a grim confirmation of investigators' fears and a devastating moment for her family. Though justice was served, the emotional toll on the community was immense. Fellow soldiers and nurses grappled with the betrayal and danger that had been hidden in plain sight, struggling to reconcile the image of someone they trusted with the atrocities he had committed. The case prompted an immediate review of security protocols on military bases, with emphasis on safeguarding personnel and monitoring individuals with access to sensitive areas. The military implemented stricter background checks for contractors and reinforced support networks for service members, recognizing that even trained professionals could be vulnerable to exploitation. Though the contractor faced the full weight of the law, questions lingered in the minds of those left behind. How many more women might have been observed, tracked, or threatened without anyone knowing? How many narrowly escaped a fate like Sarah's? Her story became a symbol of both the dangers that can lurk unseen and the relentless efforts of those who refuse to let predators operate unchecked. In the end, Sarah Miller's life and tragic loss ignited a commitment to vigilance, protection, and justice, ensuring that the memory of her courage would not be forgotten, even as her absence continued to haunt those who knew and loved her.